Welcome to Unbroken the podcast. I'm Savannah Levins. I started this podcast because in my life experience and working as a news reporter, I found everyone's been knocked down or blindsided or had their world seemingly turned upside down at some point. And for many people, it's cathartic to talk about their experiences out loud. And likewise, it can be therapeutic to hear other people's stories and know that there is light at the end of all darkness. If you have a story you'd like to share on the podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Just email unbrokenthepodcast@gmail.com. And please rate, review, and subscribe. Today on the podcast, we have Ulunda. She has a chronic skin condition that, for a while, really consumed her life, ruined her confidence, and sent her into a pretty deep depression. Her story of learning to accept herself as is, I think, is applicable to so many of us. I guarantee her words are going to speak to you no matter where you are today. Here's Ulunda. Today on the podcast, we have Ulunda. Ulunda, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And you have a very unique story that we have not had on the podcast yet. And I know you mentioned that you have actually several stories, really.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I will admit I am super nervous. And yeah, it was interesting. I could have, talked about many different things, overcoming homelessness and being exposed to mental abuse and drug addiction and just mental illness. There are so many things that have ran rapid in my family, and growing up having to be exposed and or lived through some of those things. So when I saw your inquiry about the podcast, I said, is this my time to start really talking about that in a broader audience? I do that with a lot of small women's groups. And I don't know, it was just something that day that said, you know what, there's another story to be told for this moment.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So what is that story? Tell me about it.
So ironically, the night before I saw your inquiry about this podcast, I was in a group. It's called the HS Diet Connection. And it is a group of about, I think we're up to about 11,000 people, actually all over the world, who suffer from a condition called, and I'm going to totally ruin the name every time, but hidradenitis suppurativa.
I'm glad you said it, because when you emailed it to me, I was like, I am not going to be able to pronounce that. I'm going to let her take the lead on it.
Yeah, it's tough, but I tell you what, you can just call it HS.
Okay,
and
we'll do that.
That's how we're referred
from here on out.
From here on out. So it's called the HS Diet Connection, and again, 10,000 plus people all over the world, and it's I call it acne on steroids. I actually refer to it almost like a monster, because unlike acne, where it's little pimples that pop up and it starts in puberty, and then you can grow up and have adult acne, and you can put topical and kind of treat it, and with diet and all that stuff, you can figure out some way to kind of minimize acne, right? And you can cover it up with makeup. But HS is a little bit different and runs a little bit deeper. HS is a condition that not even a lot of doctors or dermatologists know how to treat it. There's no one recipe to cure it, and there's not even a lot of awareness around it. It is a skin condition that impacts the underarms, the groin, the buttocks, and even in some cases the neck, the face, the back. It just picks its person. And then depending on the person, and I'm sure all types of background reasons, hereditary, it could be food, it could be diet, it could be whatever, aggravates it. It picks the person, and then it picks the area in which it wants to cause a war with you every day. So.
Were you diagnosed with this condition early? Have you always had it, or did it manifest later?
So it's interesting. Growing up, I've always had acne. I still have adult acne. You could probably see acne right now.
I can't, but I'll take your word.
But I've always had acne, and it started at puberty, just like it does in any regular teenage girl or boy. And I actually grew up young adulthood. I'd have a couple of areas where it just seemed like I always just had bad acne. And it wasn't until after my third child, struggling with some fertility issues and things like that, and I finally got pregnant with my first son, and then 2 sons came right after that. And then after my third child, I had an area under my arm that grew so big. It was like the size of like a kumquat, or like a small strawberry. And I had to go to the doctors, and the first thing that they did was they said, you're not clean enough. There's too much bacteria on your skin. We're going to lance it, we're going to open it up, and we're going to put you on all these antibiotics, and then it should go away. So I went through the painful process of being lanced and put on antibiotics and sent home on my merry way. I was sent home with gauze pads and Band-Aids, and that started this vicious cycle of going back, getting that same area lanced again. Every month or so, it would just come back. And then near it, another one would pop up, and another one would pop up. And I started showering 4 times a day. You know, I even tried weight loss, like extreme measures with that. I went on appetite suppressants. I changed soaps. I tried everything that I could. I eliminated tomatoes and all these things that I thought that, would help. And I kept asking doctor after doctor, dermatologist after dermatologist, what is this? And most of them would say it's a bad case of acne. And it wasn't. And I happened to be listening to a TED Talk about a couple of years ago. And a gentleman, he's actually a young guy named Jackson Gillies. He actually was on American Idol here recently. He had HS in his neck, and you could see it. You can't see the scarring from mine because I have it in my underarms, but he had it on his neck. And he was standing up in front of all these people talking about HS and describing it and how it's like a monster that hides in these areas of your body, and it only comes out when it wants, and it comes out, and when it comes out, it's going to be all out war. And then at the end of the war, and you battled through it, at the end of the day, you've got this scar that every person that has had HS, their scars look similar or the same. And in listening to him, I realized, what if I have this? What if this is it? And I went to the doctors, and I actually took them a printout from Google, and I said, is this what I have? And there happened to be a new doctor on staff that day that I saw. My doctor wasn't available, and she says, yes, and I have it too.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I keep going back in my mind to that first doctor who said you're just dirty, and the next ones who just said, oh, what was that like for you to hear that? Because I imagine in your head, you're like, really? That's it? And I would be very offended to hear that and not have any alternate explanation at all for so long. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you?
It was heartbreaking. I am a corporate a woman working in business every day. I'm a mother of 3 boys. I have always dressed actually very professionally because I've been in corporate. So I've always carried myself and taken care of my body and all those things. And for that to be one of the first things, it literally broke me. And I'm going to share something that, I don't know, I struggled with sharing this today, but that I remember going home and getting in the shower. And I remember showering nonstop for about 2 hours. I could not get myself out of the shower. And I just kept scrubbing and I kept washing and I got out. And it got so bad that my husband started noticing the frequency of me showering. I did not want to be hugged by him at the end of the day unless I showered. I didn't want to go out to a social setting unless I showered. And it got so bad that one day he just kind of stopped me in the bathroom and said, "You've got to stop. What is driving this?" And at that moment, I had to actually tell my husband what I had. And I couldn't hide Band-Aids anymore. And I couldn't hide the gauze pads anymore. And that's where I just had to say to him, this is what, I had after a while, after I finally got diagnosed. And it was hard, but that day changed my life.
Yeah.
And I sunk into this deep just pit of depression where I started avoiding meeting with friends and just stay in my house. I work remote, so that kind of helped where I didn't have to always be out, but I travel, and I just traveled with my little things that I needed and all of that. But it was heartbreaking for me. Yeah. So forget the homelessness and all these other things I had overcame, right? Like, this was something that I couldn't fix. Like, I couldn't bust my butt in school and get good grades and grow up and have a great job and then make homelessness go away and poverty go away. I couldn't go to a therapist and get treatment and things like that and start to chip away at, counseling issues and all that. Like, this was something that not even my own doctor at the time could tell me what it was.
Oh, I can't imagine. That must have been so hard. And you felt the need to even hide it from your husband for a while.
Yeah.
That's how bad. Oh my goodness. And that's why I'm glad you're sharing this story, because I think, not only is this story applicable to this condition, but I think a lot of people might be listening who have something that they struggle with and feel like they need to hide and feel like is out of their control and might be embarrassed by. And that could be a variety of things. So I think that's important. So let's go back to where you now have an answer of what this is. Where do things go from there?
So, listening to Jackson, I find out about this HS diet connection. I find out about this book called The Hidden Plague by this wonderful lady that wrote that. And I go on Facebook and I find the group, and I join the group. And I just that day, the posts that I saw from all over the world, people, actually there was a lady in South Carolina that posted, I'll never forget that. I'm like, there's somebody within like a state that has what I have, right? And then reading through the comments of where people would just say, I'm so tired of buying bandages. I went to the dermatologist today and I think I have what you all have, but he told me I just need to change my diet. I went to the doctors today after losing 70 pounds and I still have it. Or I am at my perfect weight. I'm a marathon runner. I am a vegetarian. How can I have this? And they say it's because I inherited it, but you don't have it in your family, or do you? Because you don't know, because people won't tell each other. All of these different comments, it was so freeing for me. And it also was a revelation that it didn't matter what size you were. It didn't matter what color you were. It didn't even matter that you lived in Florida and you tend to sweat more. That was something a doctor said to me. Moving to Charlotte from Florida should be great for you because the less humidity and sweating you do, the better. It's hot in Charlotte, so that didn't change much, right?
Yeah.
But maybe if I move to, I don't know, Colorado, it'll get better. But then I know a lady in Colorado that has it worse than me. But seeing the comments in this group was very freeing. It gave me a sense of community. It also made me realize over time that the 10,000 of us have to be a voice for the 10,000 of us that won't say a thing.
It sounds like seeing this group and even hearing you describe, like, oh my gosh, there's a woman a state away who has what I have. Did you feel before that moment very alone? And do you think you were manifesting some self-hate in some ways? Because it sounds like this group, realizing that you weren't alone, was such a huge relief.
It goes back to what you said, that we're all struggling with something. And for years, I would even hide some of the things that happened in my childhood from people. And so when this came about, it was like, well, how could maybe something that happened then, is the reason this is happening to me now? And then you start to thinking, what if I was just born into a life that is always headed to devastation?
No, that's a horrible thought.
It is. It's a hard thing to unravel in your mind when you start off in the world with all these big things and then you feel like you're overcoming them and you've survived, and then there's this thing that sort of feels small. But depending on the day, depending on the month, when this monster wants to rear its ugly head, it's bigger than everything in your world. And you can't really control it. You can't really just resolve it. You can't cure it. You can treat it, but then that might make it worse. You can, cover it, but it's still happening underneath. Your whole closet changes. I don't wear sleeveless, clothes. Even though I have stage 1, there are different stages where, I've had areas that I haven't heard from them in forever now, right? I might have 1 or 2 that are active and 1 or 2 that are not. But I choose not to wear sleeveless clothes because now I have scarring that constantly reminds me of the battle every day since learning about this.
The title of your email to me, I believe, was Battle Scars. Yeah. Why did you choose that?
Because it's like the scars in a beautiful way have become the identity for this group of people. And whereas these scars could be seen as horrendous or ugly or whatever, to me, over the course of this couple of years of really accepting this, they become something beautiful. A reminder that, yes, I get up every day and instead of showering myself to death or thinking suicidal thoughts because I just can't deal with the pain anymore, that as they heal, that's just one more win of the battle. And I choose to look at it that way. And my hope is, the girl that I saw in the group the night that I saw your inquiry about the podcast, she's 16 years old. She ran across the group somehow. I don't even remember. She really wanted to go out for the cheerleading team. But she was afraid because she had all these scars and cheerleaders are beautiful and perfect in her eyes. And she said, I'm not worthy and I'm not going to go out.
That makes me tear up. That's so horrible.
So I'm 35. I have a career. I have a husband. I have kids. And I don't have a cheerleading team to go out for anymore.
Yeah.
I've overcome enough in my life where honestly, some days I really just don't care what people think anymore. I'm tired of feeling like people can use things to make you feel down, like those doctors, right?
Yeah.
So I've chosen in my life that I'll spend the next 30 plus years empowering people, every person that I meet, and reminding them that there is power within you that you can overcome, and you have to equip yourself and surround yourself with people that understand and love you and accept you, and you can do it. And for this 16-year-old girl, I said, how selfish of me to get on that podcast and talk about things that I've overcame when she's in it right now. She could be a great, wonderful cheerleader, and she won't even allow herself the chance because she doesn't want people to see. Unfortunately, right now, that monster is attacking her underarms, and she's got bandages she's wearing to school every day.
Man. For people who are listening who might be in the middle of their struggle, whatever it is, if they're dealing with, skin condition or acne, or if it's something else, maybe mental health struggles, literally anything that they're struggling with and they're in the pit of it, the middle of it, I think they're going to want to know how you got to where you are today and in accepting it. Do you have any advice?
I do. You can go to a doctor, you can go to a therapist, you can go to a counselor. You can. Those resources are always out there and available to people. But I think it's like me. How do you get yourself out of the shower? I'm in the shower. How do I actually open the door? And I had to get my kids from carpool at some point, right? And I'm thinking, I gotta get out of the shower. And I would say to that person that's in the middle of whatever it is right now, to the child that doesn't have food on their table when they get home today, and they have parents that are drug addicts and they're raising their siblings right now, that you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, just because I was born into this, just because I have this, doesn't mean it ends with this. I think we have to admit to ourselves first that there is something, whatever it is. And then we have to say to ourselves, speak life into ourselves and say, I don't know what it's going to look like when I get out of the shower, but I'm going to actually step out of the shower and I'm going to actually dry my body. I'm going to get on clothes. And when my husband comes in here, I'm just going to dump out the basket of bandages that I've been hiding under the bathroom counter. And he could have made a choice, just like other people can make a choice and say, you're not going to make it out of poverty. You're not going to make it out of homelessness. Drug addiction is your fault or whatever. People are going to always have their opinions. You have to turn off the noise. I had to turn off the shower and I had to just take one step. And the other thing is, I do believe that there are people out there that want the best for you. But they're not always the people that you think. For me, I thought it was the first doctor. It wasn't. It was some kid clear across the country on a TED Talk that named his area on his head Bob. And him and Bob went to war. And he said, Bob, you're not going to win. So another piece of advice I would give is every time I get in the shower now, I listen to Alicia Carr's Scars to You're Beautiful. I play that over and over again while I'm in the shower. And it helps me just get out of the shower. And it helps me to look in the mirror and remind myself that the scars are beautiful in a way because I won that battle that day.
Do you think it's an important thing to have a community in whatever you're going through?
I do. And I think it's also just the sad truth that your community doesn't always look like what you want it to look like. I want my community to be my best friend, and she's going to find out about this via the podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I want my community to be my sisters. They're going to find out about it via the podcast today. My community right now is 10,000 strangers. My community is my husband, who will come in the bathroom and literally take the bandages and put them on for me because he just can see in my face I can't do it anymore. My boys are my community. I think my 12-year-old senses something because he's like, Mom, every time we go to the store, you buy Band-Aids. We don't need that many Band-Aids, Mom. And I told him I have a condition. I have to have kind of bandages on hand in case, or whatever. And it was so interesting because we were in Target the other day and he said, Mom, do you know they have Band-Aids that are your same skin color now? You can now wear sleeveless shirts.
Sweet.
My community is my 12-year-old son.
That's so sweet. Oh.
So just accepting that you got to find your people.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Thomas Watson, he's a chaplain in the military, real estate agent. He's just a great guy, great mentor. He's always talking about finding a tribe. And your tribe doesn't always have to look like what you think your tribe should look like. So to people that are listening and whatever you're dealing with, find you a tribe of people that get it, that are willing to change the bandages in life, no matter what the wound looks like, because we all have them.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice.
I'll ask, it sounds like you've hidden this from a lot of people for a long time, and you're very open with me about it now and with all of our listeners. You mentioned seeing that little girl's post and then emailing me, which you opened by saying, this is hard for me to send. Why did you want to be here, and what's the one thing you want people to take away? You've said a lot of great things, but if there's one thing that everyone takes away from listening to your story, what do you want that to be?
That's hard a lot, but I'll tell you, my husband and I have committed to being legacy starters. And remember I told you, you can't always change. You can't change what you've been born into. You can't change what conditions you have. You can't change life, because life's going to happen. It's going to happen. But what you can change is how you approach it in that moment. And for me, I want to be a voice for people that can't speak, a voice for people that can't get out of the shower, a voice for that teenage girl that she can't go out and cheerlead because her classmates haven't been made aware that this is something that people deal with. They've been made aware of drug abuse and addiction and mental illness and puberty and all that. They haven't been made aware that there are other things that happen to people like this. So I personally want to be someone that helps people start a legacy for themselves. And this is a part of my legacy. I don't like it. Would I have chose it? No. But it's here. And it's in my hand, and I have to choose what to do with it. So my biggest advice for anybody facing anything is sometimes you're handed the ball. You're handed whatever it is, and yes, you're dealing with it. But what if your job in this life is to take that and to carry it forward for other people, or lay out a plan to help other people deal with it? Yeah. So I always tell my boys, at some point, I'm going to leave this world. It's inevitable. And if the only thing that I was ever known for was raising awareness for HS, that's good enough for me. Yeah. Because that means that one teenager, boy or girl, is going to go out for the football team and possibly be the best player the history's ever seen because I gave it a voice for them.
I think it's small acts of strength and bravery like what you're doing that make our world a better place. If it hadn't been for that guy giving the TED Talk, who knows where you would be, and he had to be brave to do that. And I think it's just these little tiny degrees of bravery that we find in ourselves that help each other in ways that we could not possibly understand while we're doing it. Yeah. So I so appreciate you coming on. When are you giving your TED Talk? Because because I will be there. You are an incredible voice.
Let me tell you. So my husband and I, we've been working on this book for a while. We've got a group. We'll get on social media. We do a lot of serving, like in the community and things like that. And we've reached this place, I don't know, in our life where we're like, it's time to we've gone through all these things. It's just time to start telling people about it. Mm-hmm. And the people are going to ask questions, and there may be some people today that may say, oh my goodness, I can't believe she's dealing with that. There may be people that say, that's disgusting. There may be people that Google it, and they may never invite me to sit in the same presence with them again. But that's okay, because we found ourselves in this place where we're at the place in our life where we just want to be a voice, and we want to be out in community with people and helping people to change their lives. Mm-hmm. Starting a legacy, because you're not always given one, but you can always create one. And like you said, it's the tiny bit of bravery and courage and tenacity and perseverance that you're going to put in that mixing bowl, and you're just going to create something out of it that will hopefully change someone's life. Yeah. And you may not be alive to see the change either. That's the other piece,
Yeah, we've seen that in history,
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. Any final words before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you for giving HS another platform. Jackson did it on American Idol. There are podcasts and talks popping up all over the country, finally, for people to see that this does exist. Mm-hmm. And I guess closing thoughts would be, if there's someone out there and you're right now in the shower and you're changing the bandage and you're struggling or whatever, I'm there with you too. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to keep battling, and we have the scars. They're not medals, they're not shiny, they're not exciting to look at, but there are medals for winning the battle every time.
Yeah. Listeners, we all have our battle scars, and when you feel ready and when you find the strength, step out of the shower, take a look at yourself, love yourself. You're beautiful. Definitely. Great advice. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it. And thank you for listening to Unbroken, the podcast. We'll see you next time.